During the next 40 minutes, we'll share the ways that the firms are trying to solve the pardon the interruption problem, and we'll discuss how these burdensome emails may be eliminated. Our presenter today is Jason Noble, GM of Product Development for the Firm Directory. Jason has spent more than a decade focused on collaboration software solutions for Fortune 500 companies, as well as the nation's top law firms. Jason has put his know-how and passion to work developing the Firm Directory, delivering a premier legal experience discovery system. We'd like to keep today's call interactive as possible, so please submit your questions in the Q&A window and I'll ask them as we go along. With that, Jason, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Mike, for the introduction. I appreciate that. Just a couple checklist items here. First, Mike, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. And can you see a screen that says moderator checklist?
I can.
Perfect. Okay, so thanks again, everyone, for joining today's webinar. We have a series of polls during the webinar that we hope will keep this as interactive as possible. And as Mike mentioned, please ask questions along the way, and we'll do our best to answer those. The agenda for today is, first, we're just going to set some guidelines or some boundaries on what these pardon the interruption emails, what they provide, what business value they provide. Then we'll talk about the solutions that we've seen deployed across several firms and find some commonality between those solutions. Then we'll move into some techniques for optimizing the PTI request workflow. Finally, we'll move into a demonstration, a very, very brief demonstration of the Firm Directory, and then close out with a preview of something that we're actively developing that we'd love to hear your feedback on, and potentially, if we have design reviews, invite you to participate in those as well. So what is the business driver for pardon the interruption emails? What we've seen in working with firms over the last few years is that really it's a mechanism by which you can quickly assess the firm's experience or expertise in a particular area of law, or really within any knowledge domain. We've seen that this workflow starts during the cross-selling workflow, for lack of a better term. Maybe a partner is engaged with a client, and that client shoots them an email that says that they're looking for particular experience. Can the firm represent them? So sometimes it's during that cross-selling activity. We've also seen it used during the business development cycle and in responding to RFPs. Some very, very common examples, and we've seen hundreds of these examples, but just to give you a couple, one might be, who has experience litigating claims under the Federal Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act? So that email would go out, and the expectation is that people would reply to that. But we've also seen more interesting requests where there's actually multiple filters or facets of knowledge that are being requested. For example, my client has an issue in need of someone with aviation law experience and intellectual property. Who do we have? So it's a really quick way to just say, hey, who in the firm can help me with this particular matter? What we've observed is that there are primarily three technologies that are being used, or approaches that are being used, to satisfy these particular requests. We've seen that firms use one and sometimes a combination of all three of these, but they're basically the following. You have an email-based pardon the interruption workflow. Some firms have the concept of a centralized knowledge manager, and this is a term that we came up with, so if you don't have that role, that's okay. It's just the way that we've chosen to categorize the concept. And then finally, we have seen firms leveraging enterprise search to satisfy these particular requests. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start our first poll here and see if you guys can let us know what you've seen related to expertise discovery. So which of the following does your firm use to locate expertise? Okay, about 5 more seconds. Okay, great. And it looks like the vast majority of you are using that email-based approach, so that's great to know. I'm going to go ahead and close out that poll and go back to my presentation. And so let's talk about what we've seen around the email-based workflow. Essentially what happens is there's a series of distribution lists. Maybe it's all attorneys, maybe it's Florida attorneys, maybe it's intellectual property attorneys. So we create these distribution lists that the requester is expected to address their request to. Typically, these emails have some type of common subject line like PTI or in search of or pardon the interruption, and then you provide a brief description of what it is that you're looking for. Depending upon the firm, the expected response time to these PTIs varies pretty significantly. Sometimes you're expected to drop what you're working on and immediately respond to it. Other times it's more casual, and as you have time, you can get to these pardon the interruptions. But the expectation is that the recipients do reply to that and do their best to help solve the problem. So there are some benefits to this approach. The first benefit is that it is super simple. So it's kind of a low-tech way to solve this particular challenge. Everyone knows email. Everyone knows how to send to distribution lists. So it really is a low-friction approach to solving this problem. There are some challenges with it. First and foremost, our inboxes are already inundated with client-based communication, internal firm-based communication. So having another thread of emails hitting our inbox can be a distraction. Also, this approach tends to include too many people while simultaneously excluding people. So depending upon the request, if you send it out to all attorneys, obviously that is going to hit far too many people for that particular request. But if you don't include that kind of all-inclusive list, you're likely missing some people that could help you out as well. Also, reuse of this knowledge, meaning once you do find that individual is typically pretty limited, because what we've observed is that the expectation is that the person receiving the request actually does a direct response to the requestor, meaning everyone on that list does not get inundated with email, yet they do not see the answer as well. So there are some benefits and challenges with this approach. Next, what we've seen is that there's a concept of a centralized knowledge manager. And this is basically an extension of the pardon the interruption email workflow, except that instead of sending it to a large group of individuals, it's actually sent to a smaller group that is responsible for responding to the emails themselves. It's typically a group of individuals either in knowledge management, the KM organization, or in business development and marketing. And really, they use a combination of their own tools, whether it's spreadsheets. Sometimes they use email, sometimes they have custom applications, sometimes they use enterprise search, but they have this centralized responsibility for maintaining their own content. And basically, they're responsible for matching the business need to the correct group of experienced people. Sometimes they even provide the answer themselves, so they don't even have to reach out to the group of individuals that meet a certain criteria. So some of the benefits is that this does eliminate the burden of answering PTIs from billing attorneys to a smaller group. And it actually, what we've seen is it actually is a pretty effective way of getting to the right answer, but getting to that right answer is pretty time intensive, and it does require a commitment, a time commitment for those individuals. And obviously, depending upon the number of requests you receive, it can become burdensome or overwhelming if you're receiving several requests a day, and depending upon how sophisticated the request is, will determine how long it takes you to respond to that. We've seen that some of these requests can take weeks to reply to collect all of the information. And finally, it is the responsibility of this CKM role to maintain the knowledge repository, whether, again, if that's through a custom application, email, Excel spreadsheets, what have you. It really is that person's or that group of individuals' responsibility to maintain that knowledge repository. The third approach that we've seen is that firms are leveraging enterprise search tools as a repository for discovery. And the workflow basically goes like this, where you input some keywords, maybe you select some filters, and you're presented back with a list of people and supporting content that they are associated with. And so the enterprise search tool actually infers experience based on contributions to time notes, matter narratives, other documents. It might look at the time and billing to see who billed against a particular matter. And if that matter is relevant to the search, it'll return those people as well. The nice thing about this is that there is typically automatic crawling of those legal specific solutions. So it pulls that content in. And then some actually even have auto classification of the search results so that as content is pulled in, you can categorize it to specific industries. The benefits of this approach is that the experience is automatically assigned based on the content created and associated with this particular person. And it is a more of a algorithm-based solution, meaning you type in the keyword and it will return people based on the content that it finds. And it really does provide some great supporting evidence for why that person was returned. The most challenging problem with this particular approach is that many times it returns what are commonly referred to as false positives, meaning it returns to you people that don't necessarily have that experience, but maybe they're associated with a matter that is reflective of that particular search term. Also, because there's significant depth in the search experience, there's a pretty significant adoption curve that you have to go through to master these tools. So there is a time investment related to training and getting your users to adopt the technology. So we talked that there are three technologies or three approaches to solving this problem, but we actually see a huge opportunity that firms are missing. And that is the fourth option, which we call the homegrown directory. So this is your internal firm directory that we've seen typically developed by your internal IT folks. Often it's built on top of SharePoint or some other intranet-based solution. It's used firm-wide for basic contact information. So across the board, we've seen that every firm has a firm directory that you look for people based on first name and last name, and you get their basic contact information. But we've seen that these solutions do have industry experience, they have practice-specific information, and sometimes they even collect skills. So we think of this as an underutilized asset that firms currently have that they're not using. Some of the benefits of this approach is that it's the homegrown approach specifically, is that it's very customized to your firm, and it does have wide adoption, meaning everyone uses it to go find people's basic contact information. But there are some challenges that we've seen. One is that the user interfaces for these firm directories are usually not very friendly, and we've actually seen firm directories that are still in use today that are in upwards of 15 years old, so they're really kind of dated. And they are costly to maintain. We've had feedback where adding a field to these firm directories can take weeks. We think that it should be much, much easier, much more flexible to mature your firm directory over time. So what makes up a good firm directory? First of all, what we've observed is that mobile is starting to become very, very important. So we think that these firm directories need to be accessible via mobile devices. They should be able to be integrated with your MDM solutions. So we're starting to see an increased interest in MDM solutions within the firms we work with. It also needs to have a very, very deep integration capability with systems of record, meaning you want your firm directory's content to, for the most part, be auto-populated and filled in by talking to whether it's a data warehouse or maybe an HRIS system. We also have seen that the ability to self-declare skills or some experience actually makes a lot of sense. And the reason that this is important is because if you're primarily using a search tool that infers knowledge, like I said, you're missing some opportunities to identify people that could in fact participate and solve very specific problems. Your firm directory should handle both complex and simple searches to locate the right people. So these should be based on skills, industries, bar admissions, court affiliations, even their title. So it should have a very, very rich search capability. And for content that is self-declared, we think that an approval workflow is pretty important, so that if someone comes in and they say that they know something about bankruptcy litigation, you should have the opportunity to approve that from a business development or from that CKM role's perspective. You should have the opportunity to prove that before it shows up in someone's profile. And then finally, the user experience is key. What we've seen with the firm directories that are currently deployed is that people do a search for first name and last name, they get to their profile, but really they're not interested in discovering more about that particular individual. And we think that that is because the user experience is not as accessible as people expect in the days of or in a world where they have tools like LinkedIn and other tools like that. So we think user experience is very important. Okay, so our next poll is going to be related to the firm directory itself. So the poll is, do you have any plans to modernize your firm directory in the next 6 months or so? Okay, about 5 more seconds. So it sounds like the vast majority of you are, in fact, looking to do an upgrade, but it's just a matter of the timing that seems to be a variable. So I'll go ahead and close that out. Okay.
And Jason, while we're waiting on that, actually, I did receive a question. The question was, is the firm directory dependent on SharePoint? Is it dependent on SharePoint?
It is not dependent on SharePoint. We have a few different deployment options for you. One, it can be a standalone, or it can be hosted within SharePoint itself. So a direct answer is no, we are not dependent on SharePoint, but for those that have invested in it, we have a great integration story.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the firm directory. So the firm directory at its core is an experience discovery system. And what we do is we connect with your existing HR databases or your data warehouses and pull in the content that you already have within your firm. So if you have a firm directory, what we would like to do is pull that content in and give you this more modernized user experience. And really that provides the foundation for these experience-based queries. So we should be able to answer questions like, who do we have that has aviation experience and intellectual property? Those questions should be very, very simple for you to answer, just based on the data that we've seen inside existing firm directories. Now, we think of this as a tool for the entire firm, including the CKM role, right? So it's not necessarily just for partners and attorneys. Really, this can become the repository if you have that CKM role that they use as the kind of their first place to go to find people. We'll talk about some of the features of how you can group people together and save those search results for later use.
Jason, another SharePoint question for you.
Sure.
Is there a difference in solutions for SharePoint 2010 or 2013?
The capability is exactly the same, but I heard the term solution, and so when I think of the word solution in the context of SharePoint, that's a very specific term. They are different solutions from the 2013 to the 2010 world, technically, you know, at the code level, so to speak. But the capabilities are the exact same in 2010 and 2013.
Okay, great. And actually, if I may, I did receive one other question with regards to HR databases. So the question is, if the HR database does not contain experience type data, can we pull it from billing systems or document management systems?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the approach that we would like to take. What we'd like to do is have the vast majority of this knowledge pulled and validated from external systems. So, yeah, we can absolutely pull that in from external systems.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
None at this time.
Nope.
We're good to
Okay.
keep going.
So, at the foundation or the base of what the firm directory does is it provides you with a profile for each member of the firm. So obviously partners, staff, attorneys, associates, what have you. And we collect information like biography information, employment history. We can collect key matters that they've worked on. We can collect projects that they've worked on and clients. And we can even do things like billing rates. And obviously the collection of what industry experience they have. We've seen some firms use this for more operational type information, things like H-1B status, or if there are any staffing covenants or conflicts of interest for a particular person. And that type of information can be very, very secured and limited to who can access that. So the next capability that we introduce is this opportunity for firms to approach skills a little bit differently. So one, we allow you to, if you choose, have what we call a self-declaration of skills. And this is where someone can go in and they can say that they know something about bad faith or insurance rates. But we give you several different options. One is that if you want to go down the path where there is no self-declaration, it's all appointed experience, we can do that as well by looking at external systems. But the thing that to keep in mind here is that when people self-declare a skill, it's not necessarily saying that they are the expert in that skill. It's just simply that they're opting in to be contacted for these pardon the interruption type activities. That's really what they're doing. They're saying, hey, I know something about bad faith. If the firm has a request related to this topic, you feel free to contact me. So really we're building communities of people that share common experiences so that the CKM or other folks within the firm itself can have an environment that they can search and discover those people within the firm themselves. We also do include workflow, so if you want to have tighter controls around what skills are being self-declared, we give you that option. And finally, we think that of this is something that you should consider, whether through Neudesic's firm directory or your own firm directory, at least do some type of a pilot or a POC where you allow self-declaration to occur within your firm. All right. So let's do a couple more polls here. This is actually 2 polls in a row. So first thing we'd like to ask is, has your firm ever attempted to collect legal specific skills for partners, attorneys, and staff? Have you ever done that in the last 10, 15 years? Okay, about 5 more seconds. Okay, and so it looks like several of you have tried, some with success, some not successful, and then others it looks like no, you have not tried it, but you are considering it. So that's very interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next poll, which is more related to if your firm has a system in place for inferring experience. Okay, about 10 more seconds on this one. Okay, so it looks like at least based on the numbers here, about 50% do not, but then the remaining have something, whether it's built in-house or purchased off the shelf. All right. Okay, so the firm directory itself provides you with a search experience that allows you to find people based on legal specific skills, industry experience, languages, bar admissions, key matters, really anything that you see fit. What we like to do is when we engage with our customers, we like to collect maybe the last year's worth of, pardon the interruption, emails and determine how people are searching for each other, whether that's based on skill, industry experience, bar admissions, and then we work to figure out the optimum profile based on those search results. We do have direct SharePoint integration from the search perspective, so if you're leveraging SharePoint search engine, we have direct integration with that. So when you do a search within SharePoint, people come up based on their skills and based on the profile content that they've filled out. If you're leveraging a third-party search tool, we do have APIs and data views that allow you to integrate with those third-party products, meaning the firm directory's content can be used as a data source within those third-party applications. So you get a nice mix of inferred experience plus the self-declared experience as well. Okay, and finally, talking about mobile, the firm directory is available on as a mobile web application, and that just simply means that any device with a mobile web browser can access the firm directory, and they can use it as a basic contact database. They can use it for basic phone number information, email information, but in addition to that, you can get into things like their skills, their bar admissions, employment history. You can customize what shows up on the mobile device specifically. And finally, what happens in the firm directory when search is not enough? Meaning there's a particular request where we've used the search environment, but we're not finding anyone. Well, what we have here is a questions and answers facility where you can ask questions of the community, and you can target those questions to individuals that have certain skills. We'll do a really quick demonstration of this, but again, this is a way for the firm to create a knowledge repository of questions that are being asked and allow the community to respond in a public environment without loading our inboxes with all of these replies to the various, pardon the interruption, emails. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a demonstration. And what I'm going to do is I'll just do a really quick demo. We do want to be respectful of your time, so we're going to take about 10 minutes. And first of all, moderator, can you see my screen that's showing the firm directory?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. And you can still hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
I'll assume yes. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about the firm directory. First of all, the most common scenario that we've seen the firm directory used is just simply as a mechanism for getting basic contact information. So we have this nice global search where if you type in someone's name, they come up very quickly. But when you're looking to solve or looking to satisfy a, pardon the interruption, type request, we give you a very, very rich search environment. And you can do things like full keyword searches. So maybe I want to do a search for ADA. This will actually search the entire profile and return to you people with that particular experience. But maybe I'm not looking to do a full crawl of the profile. Maybe I know the skills that I'm looking for, and maybe it's who has experience in bad faith, who has experience in combination with bad faith, maybe somebody who has experience with insurance rates or rates themselves. So I'll go ahead and select that. And you can see that it starts to filter down the result set. Now, you can do a few interesting things here. One, as a CKM, you can actually download this result set as an Excel document. So maybe you want to save this result set as the people who have both bad faith and insurance rates. And you can even get more specific. You can select a particular industry that you're interested in, for example, aviation, and you can see the two people that have that combination of skills plus industry specific information, or experience, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that and show you a couple other things. And again, you can download this result set into an Excel document so that you can format it however you want to. We've seen this used for things like creating rosters of who is in our litigation practice or what have you. So once I'm on my search result, I can see some basic information, and all this is customizable. So what we do is we show key matters and key clients and their bar admissions and any industry experience, obviously important contact information. But as I'm querying the firm, I can actually move this result set into something that we call People Pivot. And this gives you the opportunity to navigate through the various profiles in the system, yet still maintain this kind of search result so that it's persistent and you're able to jump back and forth between the search results and the various profiles. So this is a typical example of one of our profiles. We collect biography information, obviously personal information around contact info, industry experience, the skills and expertise, and the title here can be changed. So if you want it to say legal specific skills, or if you want it to say ask me about, we can change that so that the expectation is slightly altered. In addition to that, we collect employment information, bar admission. Go ahead.
Sorry, related to that, we actually did receive a question regarding the experience categories. Are they predefined or are they defined by the firm?
So we provide you with a taxonomy that has about 1,800 elements, but you're in control of that, so you can define the categories and the skills that are relevant. Okay, so continuing on. So we collect, again, employment information, bar admissions, education, key clients, and I'm going to show you something that's pretty neat here. What we can do, I'm going to go ahead and reset my People Pivot result. And if I'm on Laney's profile and I wanted to, for example, see everyone that has or first of all, everyone that worked at a particular firm, I can click that, and actually it brings up all of the folks that have worked at that particular firm. In addition, I can do what's known as a multifaceted People Pivot, where I can click on Florida as well, and then it shows me a combination of people that have that work experience as well as a bar admission in Florida. So all of the elements on the profile itself you can interact with and find similarities between people. So the basics of the firm directory, and we're not going to go into too much detail here, but everyone has a profile. The profiles pull information from various data sources. We try to create a profile that's about 90% complete for the individuals that provides the foundation for search, or I'm sorry, experience-based searches. We also provide you with flexibility in terms of what sections are available on the profile. We provide you with great search tools and SharePoint integration. One of the capabilities that I wanted to highlight here was what happens, or what do we provide for collecting pardon the interruption type requests. What we do here is we give you a questions and answers capability where people can ask the community specific questions. So instead of typing up an email, they actually can come to this system and input the request right within the firm directory. Now, once they ask the question, this becomes a repository of all of the questions that are being asked within the firm. So if you're in that CKM role, you can click on unanswered, and you can see all the questions that have been asked that are currently outstanding. Now, if you're in that CKM role, and here we see, do we have anyone who does maritime? Well, I can either go out and do a search, or I can click the ask button and I can type in maritime, and this will actually forward that request to anyone who is self-declared maritime. So it is a nice area that you can start to transition from email-based PTIs to a more centralized, community-based approach to answering questions or responding to PTIs. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and jump back over to the presentation and close this out. So let me go ahead and go here. Okay, so the last thing that we want to share with you is a little bit of our roadmap. What we're doing related to this specific problem is we are introducing a capability that is tentatively called In Search Of. But what this allows you to do is when you go into the firm directory, you can create a new In Search Of request. You are asked to input the brief description of that request, but then we also ask you to tag if it's relevant to an industry or particular skills. And based on this information, we can actually go out and give you recommendations of who you should be contacting, and you'll be in complete control of who the recommended folks are. For example, litigation, if you wanted to ensure that a specific person comes back for the recommendations, you're going to be in control of that. But if they choose not to interact with the recommendations, they actually send the request out, and people that meet that criteria can receive an email or they receive a notification in the firm directory, and it basically provides them with the ability to respond to that request. And what we're planning on doing here is that not only can you reply to the request by saying, yes, I do have this experience, but when you do that, any skills that have been included on the request will actually get moved into your profile, because you're basically saying that, yes, I do have experience in this particular area. Of course, all the same workflow rules apply, but people can, their profiles will automatically be updated based on how often they reply to these In Search Ofs. And then finally, there will be a screen for the CKM to manage all of these requests as they come in. So just a little preview of some of the things that we're working on. And for anyone that's interested, we'd love to get your feedback on this capability. So we will hold some design reviews, and we'd love to invite you to review this capability as we get further on down the road. Okay, in conclusion, what we are recommending here is that you begin the process of moving towards a non-email dependent solution. Not that email-based solutions are bad, but being dependent upon email is really where we see the most struggle related to pardon the interruption. Also, we think that leveraging a centralized KM, that CKM role, actually makes a lot of sense. It can really help with the very strategic asks, the really important PTIs that come in. But we also think that you should be able to provide a mechanism for the firm to get the most common requests more in a self-service mode. And that's not to say that every partner would want to go to this system and interact with it. Quite frankly, we think that emails will still come in from partners, but giving the CKM the tools to very, very quickly respond to those common requests is what we're trying to provide here. And then finally, providing some globally reusable system for future use and knowledge discovery is a practice that we'd like to see our firm starting to adopt. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pause and open it up for any questions that might have come in. So Mike, do we have any questions come in?
Yeah, we absolutely do. So thank you, Jason. So we're going to open up the floor for additional questions. We received actually quite a few, so we'll try to get through as many as we can. And Jason, forgive me, I'm going to kind of fire them off as they come in. So if you're ready, I'll go ahead and ask the first few. Is there a list of compatible external systems that we work with? Excuse me. So for example, CMS, etc.
Yeah, so what we do is we have a kind of a holistic approach on how we do integration. We have this concept that we call a common data structure, where all data gets into this shared view. So the direct support with external systems comes through various connectors. So it's through that common data structure that we actually do our integration.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question, and both of these are pertaining to mobile. Is it through an app or an MDM, or is it cloud-based like Azure and the like?
Well, so our mobile apps are all hosted by the firm itself, right? So it's not necessarily out in AWS or Azure. It's actually hosted by the firm. So it's more of a on-premise that's extended out to your mobile devices. That's not to say that we can't host the firm directory for you, but we've just seen better adoption hosting it on-site with the firm.
Okay. And then the next question related to mobility is, can the actual mobile client be customized to, for example, display a firm's name?
Yeah, absolutely. Like a opening logo or the firm name, absolutely. That's right. Because we're using a mobile web app, we can absolutely do that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. The next question is related to security levels. So what are the security levels around each of the field within a profile?
So each field or section can be secured to either Active Directory groups or individual Active Directory users, meaning that if we take billing rates as an example and we only want partners or managing partners to be able to see billing rates, we can secure that section based on Active Directory membership or actually even based on individuals. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very granular. We have control over who can create, read, update, and delete any element within the firm directory.
Okay. And this was kind of a consistent theme I've noticed through some of these questions. One of them relates to the collection of information from external websites for the biography information. Can that be done?
Yeah. The challenge that we've seen working with some of those public-facing bios, and this is just being transparent, is that a lot of the times the bios themselves contain HTML content, so we do need to strip that content before it comes in. But we have worked with pretty standard hosting providers that do provide more structured information, so we can absolutely pull from those public-facing bios. But the one caveat is that sometimes we've seen that they contain HTML elements that need to be pulled out before we push into the firm directory.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next question is relating to pulled data. So, and I'm going to read this one verbatim. So if there's a change in automatically pulled data, such as Workday, is someone prompted to check the more ad hoc data for possible necessary changes? And this is kind of related to the example of the sample bio had London in her office, and her bio said, for example, that it was located perhaps in Moscow.
Oh, interesting. So there is a differentiation between content that is self-declared. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, is there some type of additional step that can be taken for content that gets pulled in from external systems? And the answer is yes, but typically we pull in a lot of information, so we would want to balance this kind of approval workflow process with the volume of information that comes in. So I think maybe if we can set up a conversation with the person that asked that question, maybe if I can kind of query back and forth and we can come up with the right answer.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. Next question, how often are new features added to the firm directory?
We are on a quarterly release schedule. So that's not to say that we don't have service packs where we make minor tweaks, but typically we do quarterly releases.
Let's see here. Next question. Do you have a list of external systems your connectors work with?
Yeah, we can provide you with that. So Mike, why don't you go ahead and take that down, and we'll go ahead and follow up with that one.
Absolutely. And then the last question I think we have time for today, and Jason, thanks for being a good sport and responding in kind. Can the firm directory be used as a replacement for SharePoint My Sites, or can pieces be used to replace certain areas?
Well, I think if you leverage My Sites, we would naturally, the most natural way to leverage the firm directory would be to enhance the MySite experience. We have seen firms that have, instead of using the MySite, they use their own kind of profile.aspx page, for lack of a better term. And we can naturally enhance that as well. But if you have MySites deployed, I would look at it more as an extension on top of MySites.
Okay. Great. Everyone, thank you very much for your great questions. We appreciate it. There might have been a couple that we were unable to get through. So when I send a follow-up note, please feel free to respond, and we'll be happy to answer any additional questions as well as ones that may still be outstanding. So to kind of close us out for today, I'd like to take a moment. Jason, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Recording of this webinar will be made available to you shortly via email. For the folks on today's call, if you'd like to set up a customized demonstration of the firm directory, we'd be happy to offer that for you and your team. I'll include a link to set that up in the email. In the meantime, I want to thank you all for joining us and wish you all a good day. Thank you.